Welcome to another edition of our Conversations with FinTech Leaders and CEOs. Today with us, we have Romi Savova, founder and CEO of PensionBee. Romi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So in 2014, you founded PensionBee after experiencing firsthand the complexity of pension transfers while changing jobs. What specific pain points from your personal experience crystallized your vision for PensionBee? And how did your background at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley shape your approach of disrupting the pension industry?
Well, as you mentioned, I'd always covered the financial services sector, but from a strategic perspective, whether that was M&A or capital raising or looking at government balance sheets. And so I thought I knew the environment fairly well until I left my job at Morgan Stanley and had to move my retirement account. And I discovered this really opaque process whereby, first of all, it's hard to find a provider that even wants to take you on. Everyone insists that you get a financial advisor, or at least they did back then.
Yeah.
And I left my number on a bunch of financial advisor websites and nobody called me back for about 3 years, at which point I'd already started the business. Finally, I made my way over to one of the major investment platforms, one that I had come across in my investment banking world. And they sent me lots of paperwork to fill in, made me go to the post office, which I think might have been a first for me. And after playing middle person between the new provider and the old provider, the money finally made it over. And then I was shown this list of thousands of different investment options that I had to choose from. And the whole process just felt really difficult and complicated in a world where we are watching Netflix and having our dry cleaning collected and doing all sorts of things online. It just felt like there had to be a better way. And so PensionBee was born from that frustration with the objective of making pension management easy and simple for everyday savers. And so we do exactly that. We help people to combine old accounts into one new online plan. We work with some of the world's largest money managers who manage the funds sitting within the pensions. And then we help our customers to grow those accounts, save more money into them, and then eventually withdraw and have that happy retirement.
Great. And perhaps you can set the scene about the total addressable market of global pensions and the vendor landscape today. So the UK and US defined contribution pension schemes are massive. And how do you assess the total addressable market for PensionBee? Is it with the number of savers or is it assets under management? So I'll be keen to hear about that first.
Yeah, absolutely. It's both. Because, of course, when you are running a direct-to-consumer business, you are acquiring customers. But ultimately, for PensionBee, our revenue model is one that is based on assets. We make basis points on the total assets under administration that our customers have on our technology platform. And so we tend to look at both, whether that's savers who have old accounts or whether that is the assets that are sitting within those accounts. But broadly, I always like to step back and look at the overall size of the market because we're of the view that eventually, if you are an active saver in this market, you will eventually switch jobs or leave your job and you will have an old account that is transferable. And so we tend to look at how many individuals are actively saving into defined contribution accounts. And that number can vary a lot because it's based on sampling and the overall figures are just huge. But in the UK, we put that at around 20 million individuals, and that doesn't include self-employed who don't have accounts and can also use PensionBee, of whom there's about 4 million. And in the US, we put that number at around 60 million. So a huge number of individuals. And from what we can see within the market, the mass market of savers in particular is hugely underserved. In the US, for example, less than a third of Americans have individual retirement accounts, which is absolutely insane given the low Social Security safety net. And of course, from an asset perspective, the numbers are phenomenally huge. In the UK, it's 1.5 trillion pounds, And in the US, it comes close to around $30 trillion. And together, that adds up to about 85% of the global defined contribution pensions market.
That's a massive market to go after. Now, let's talk about the vendor landscape. So who do you view as your primary competitors? Obviously, you have the traditional legacy kind of pension providers from which you might be getting share of. And there are also newer fintechs like you who might be doing a lot of other things and pensions as an add-on. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the vendor landscape, please.
Well, the pensions market is absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
And so you would expect to find a huge variety of different financial services providers. This is not a winner-take-all kind of market.
Sure.
It's just too big to be that way. And so we tend to class the competitive landscape based on the levels of service that an individual would receive, and that in and of itself is largely dependent on their wealth. So at the very top end of the market, of course, you have companies that are serving the high net worth investors and ultra high net worth investors, and that is a very bespoke model. It's not particularly scalable because it relies on a very high element of personalized human touch that is incredibly specific to the individual. Most players that we see within the market tend to fall in the mass affluent space. And that is, based on different definitions, somewhere around £100,000 or dollars up to the 250,000 mark. And that space tends to be quite attractive for a whole variety of companies, whether that is some of the legacy providers or whether that's some of the self-directed investment platforms, or whether that's the lower end of the financial advice space. Very crowded market, and again, not quite as scalable as it could be because the level of personalization that is required is particularly high and quite customer specific. We at PensionBee, we focus on the mass market, and this is an area that is traditionally defined as having less than £100,000 or $100,000. To give you a bit of context, in the UK, our average account size is £20,000, and in the US, it's around $50,000 to $55,000 as our objective. That level of asset size makes it quite difficult to serve in the market. You have to be incredibly technology-led, incredibly automated, but you also have to be personalized because that part of the savings market is often the part that hasn't benefited from a lot of financial education within our schools and has not necessarily accumulated yet the assets that would afford them access to a really personalized and tailored advice-like experience. And so serving in this market is incredibly difficult because you have to have really scalable underlying technology, but also a high element of personalization for that part of the market. It has to be easy and intuitive. And so when we look inside that particular area, it's actually quite hard to see who is actively competing here. There are definitely companies that will offer services to the mass market, but it's not the primary objective. Usually it is an add-on or it's part of a strategy to take that mass market and convert it into a mass affluent play.
Sure.
There are very few companies that actually do exactly what we do from a pure play perspective and who do it at scale.
Got it. And it's a nice segue into talking about your tech stack. You did talk about being tech-led and automated quite a few times. Your app, the PensionBee app, has consistently had very high ratings, both in the App Store and in the Google Play Store. Can you walk us through the key principles that guided your early tech stack decisions and how those choices have influenced customer experience, innovation speed, and scalability as you've grown?
Absolutely. Very early on, we knew that millions of people would experience the kinds of pension problems that we ourselves as a founding team had experienced. Sure. And so we knew that we would need software that can scale to serve millions and millions of people. So the decision to build cloud native was a fairly straightforward one.
Sure.
It meant that we wouldn't have to maintain lots of expensive servers in a basement. And it gives you a lot of scalability already inherently built within the model. And so from the early days, we decided to work with Salesforce as a cloud-native platform upon which we would be able to scale. But Salesforce is obviously not a pension platform.
Sure.
Salesforce is a customer relationship management system. And so we have dedicated all of our technology efforts into building proprietary pension-related technology, whether that's the transfers, whether that's the user experience within the app, but also within the website, whether that's the interlinkages between the customer service and the underlying platform. Everything is designed from a pension perspective. And I think that makes our technology quite different and quite unique. It enables us to build very complex, customized features that can serve the mass market at scale. Drawdown is a great example. When customers come to take their money out at other pension providers, they often have to fill in paper forms, send them in the mail again, and then wait maybe a month or 2 months to receive their payments. We think that's a horrific experience for you to get your own money. So building pension proprietary technology enables us to build out difficult features like that and do them at scale. So that's always been our focus, focusing on what others haven't done, on the part of the pensions technology value chain that doesn't really exist in a commoditized way. In addition to that, more recently, we've started looking at AI as an opportunity to scale and to augment a lot of the work that we do on the technology side. I would say as a tech-forward company, we are pretty kind of open to new ideas and new ways of working. And within the business, most of us have adopted AI in some shape or form to increase personal productivity. In addition to personal productivity, there's a fairly advanced piece of work around building out our AI bot. Her name is Beatrix. And there are actually 3 versions of Beatrix running, serving in very customized areas of internal operational support. So I would say that we have made some really important decisions at the beginning of PensionBee, but also we continue to focus on embedding the best of what is available externally to continue to scale, because we know that we have to serve in the mass market, which has a very different kind of cost structure and requirement for serving profitably.
Yeah, and one other thing which kind of really fascinated me, and I was listening to your CTO, Jonathan Parsons, I think it was in a blog post or something. So he talks about low-code, no-code kind of development within PensionBee, which empowered non-technical teams to create huge amounts of value using clicks instead of code. So how, I think for me, that's a democratization of technology in an organization. And can you talk about this? Did that help the pace of innovation and the culture within the organization?
Absolutely. And we, as a company, love doing new and innovative things. Innovation is one of our core values and one of the ways that we define ourselves as a business. There are great examples of low-code ways of using technology. I think maybe the most prominent one and the one that is most visually available for customers to see is across our US domain. Within the US, we have adopted technology that enables us to only release once. And so whatever you experience on our website will also be what you experience within our Android app and also within the Apple App Store too. So that level of productivity enables us to just really go faster and faster and faster. And you can see a lot of the evidence of that within the speed with which we are deploying US features. We are also bringing that level of technology into the UK, which is something we're very excited about because it will enable us to go even faster and give customers a lot of the features that they've been asking for and continue to be on the leading edge of the pensions experience. The other place where we see a lot of low-code, kind of no-code activity is within our visual experience on our website. We create that within a software that enables our designers to actually own the visual experience and involves very minimal input from developers in terms of getting that experience live. So again, a great example of new technology that we are adopting rapidly and that we think will continue to enhance our productivity.
So in 6 years since inception, PensionBee went up from a startup to an IPO in the LSE. What were the most critical inflection points during the rapid journey, and how did you maintain focus on long-term goals while managing the demands of such accelerated, journey?
Well, the challenge of PensionBee has always been one of execution.
Yeah.
Because to get pensions right in the mass market really requires you to be good at quite a lot of things all at the same time. One is marketing, one is technology, customer service, making sure we have the right investment offering, and just overall making sure that we continue to serve the customer in the way that they expect and that facilitates our growth. So challenges, I think, are actually the same, even now as they were back then. It's just always about doing it on a slightly bigger scale. I remember back in those years, it was a time where we would often double in size every single year, from an employee perspective, sometimes from a customer perspective, and we had to manage a lot of internal change and a lot of need for rapid process and policy development. And what served us really well during that time and continues to serve us really well within execution is our culture and the way that we all feel very committed to our customers, to helping them have a happy retirement, feeling aligned in that mission to build pension confidence, and then working together in a way that really encompasses the values that the company has and the way that we see it as right to do business or to interact with each other as a team. I think that culture is probably the secret weapon to growing as quickly as you possibly can and to scaling.
Now, I want to talk about your customer acquisition strategy. So today you have around £6 billion of assets under management or under administration and around 275,000 customers. Obviously, when we spoke before, changing pensions is not a decision which someone takes every day. It happens with kind of life events and things like that. But what was your approach in kind of reaching people and kind of growing the PensionBee brand? And how has your marketing methods evolved as you have scaled?
Yes, very critical question, because marketing and brand, I think, are one of the core components of building competitive advantage. And it's very hard to acknowledge that when you don't have a brand. But when you do have a brand, you really come to understand the power of what it does and the trust that it creates.
Yeah.
And so very early on, we decided we want to have a brand. And that's a really critical decision for a lot of businesses. And many think that, oh, I'll do this in a B2B kind of fashion and I won't build brand and it will be more economical to do it that way.
Sure.
But we always wanted to be in control of the financial destiny of the company, and that meant building something that we are responsible for, so our brand. In the early days, that meant investing in a lot of content and making customers aware that we exist and we are here to help, which is what content really does. We created it on social media, we created it in writing, we did everything that we could to demonstrate why we exist, how we can help, and to offer helpful tips to customers who are thinking about pensions or other financial matters. Once we had a baseline level of content, we started to think about how we can really grow our reach and our awareness at the top of the funnel, as it's called.
Yeah.
And so we started experimenting with things like television and with radio, which have now become core staples of our UK brand building strategy. And eventually, as we continue to grow and reach and grew that level of baseline brand awareness, we moved into sports sponsorship, which we believe is a really effective way to reach the mass market. The principle we generally apply to advertising is, does it reach the mass market? We want to be where our customers are. And so if we can reach them in a low-cost way, then that tends to be a winning strategy for us. We, of course, complemented that with performance channels. And that means essentially channels like paid search or app campaigns or partnerships, and ways in which the marketing approach is perhaps a bit more transactional. And so the combination of those tactics and those channels enables us to have a diversified marketing approach, whether that is relying on television and radio in one season or relying on billboards and sports on another. The ability to decide the exact allocation is incredibly important, because channels are cyclical and you want to be able to manage them so that you can have a really good return on the marketing investment. So diversification is actually really critical when it comes to our marketing mix and the brand evolution.
And obviously, to show for that marketing, you've grown in the UK at a 70% revenue CAGR over the last 6 years. And with that 275,000 customers, and if you look at the 20 million kind of addressable kind of savers in the UK market, you're still only scratching the surface. How do you think about growth going forward? I mean, is it just a matter of you put more marketing dollars and the growth should naturally come? How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah, in the UK, we've set a goal for 1 million invested customers over the long term, defined as 5 to 10 years. And the speed of that will largely depend on the deployment of marketing spend. And we expect them to have 20 to 25,000 pounds in their accounts. And so by pure math, that takes you to 20 to 25 billion of assets.
Yeah.
And at 275,000 invested customers, we are more than a quarter of the way through. But most importantly, we've built the backbone of growing customers in any given year at scale. And so, yes, a large part of how we get to that million relies on us doing more of the same through increasing our marketing budget. We also think that there will be uplift from our growing unprompted brand awareness. And so that's when we ask customers, which pension providers do you know? And we tend to come out fairly highly compared to others within the market. We think that will give us some boost, along with some additional partnerships. And really, we expect the growing awareness about pensions in the UK, as the accounts grow overall, to give us a lift, being one of the names that is top of mind.
Now let's talk about US. US, the market is absolutely massive. You touched upon it earlier, in terms of both number of savers or the assets under the total addressable market in assets. What specific factors led you to prioritize an expansion into the US? And how have you adapted your, let's say, UK business model to address the unique characteristics of the US retirement landscape?
Well, the size was definitely a huge factor in us deciding to make the move. But what really captured us was how underserved the mass market is, despite the size. And so in the US, the fact that less than a third of American households have an IRA is something that spoke to us quite meaningfully and made us look deeper at how the technology that we have built over the past decade can be translated into a US context and used to introduce the products and features that we know customers love and enjoy, and get them to open their first IRA with us. So that translatability of what we had built for the mass market in the UK being quite evidently of use to a US mass market consumer made us feel quite confident that the US would benefit from the kind of service that PensionBee can provide. But what really kind of sealed the deal was, of course, our State Street partnership. State Street is a company that we've worked with for more than a decade, and the combination that we've built of using our technology platform, transplanting many aspects of it into the US, and combining it with marketing support in terms of marketing dollars from State Street pushed us to really make the launch happen. And so last year we got our SEC registration. We released the first version of our app towards the end of the year in December. And this year we've been focusing a lot on building out the customized transfer journeys between us and the US pension providers, while also launching simultaneously the features, the localized features, and also the core PensionBee features that we know customers will enjoy in the app.
Great. And obviously, you are still early days in the US, still building out the platform and the foundation, as you just said. What are the kind of metrics which the management team has, which will kind of define the success in the US long term?
Well, we are predominantly looking at product speed. Because we're in the build phase and rolling out features very quickly, we're kind of measuring milestones and the speed of the milestones against how quickly it took us to do similar things in the UK. We think that that is the evidence of the synergy that the technology platform brings. The other aspect that we've been looking at quite closely is our growing brand awareness in the US. I often get this question, how on earth will you build national brand awareness in such a large market?
Yeah.
And we've identified a number of channels that we think will be hugely important for us reaching that mass market where it is. The first one is, of course, social media. And so we're very carefully tracking social media followerships, but also by extension, our prompted brand awareness in the US, which we've already started measuring internally. And we are also looking at the level of exposure that we're getting within the market overall. And usually we look at PR as a measure of how interesting we are becoming to an American audience.
Thinking about a future vision of PensionBee, obviously you have a vision for improving consumer standards. You set the tone at the beginning of the conversation. You are spearheading initiatives to reduce transfer times, making withdrawals easy, and campaigning against unfair exit fees, or fees in general, if you like. So beyond growing PensionBee, what structural changes do you believe are still needed in the UK and the global pension industry?
Well, transfer times has been my hot topic for the past 10 years. In the UK, it's still possible for it to take, according to some that I've spoken to, 1,000 days to move a pension.
Wow.
That is outrageous.
Yeah.
And that particular one was with the help of an advisor, which our new upcoming report that calls for a 10-day pension switch guarantee will show. 1,000 days is a very long time to be waiting for you to move your own money.
Yeah.
And I think the industry has really gotten this one wrong, because it's not the pension provider's money, it's the customer's money. And they should be in control of who has it for them and who is managing it for them. So we will continue to call for that in the UK. But what I will say is that the US is no better. In the US, it can take weeks to move a retirement account. And crucially, sometimes the check will arrive at your home. So imagine being out of the market for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the cost of that, especially during a time of great volatility. And so what we're doing with our automations in the US is eliminating the need for a check in as many cases as possible, which we think will be a huge benefit to savers who understandably want to have control of their retirement accounts. So retirement account switch guarantee, pension switch guarantee remains my core focus and core ask of government, and probably will remain so for the foreseeable future.
Talking about some financial metrics, now you achieved an adjusted EBITDA profitability in 2024 with a 7% margins in the UK, which I would say is a major milestone for a very fast-growing fintech. When you scale further, what are the next set of financial objectives? I think you did kind of set something out in there in your recent results, specifically regarding reaching a steady state margin and generating a sustainable free cash flow. So how do you see the financial profile evolve over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond?
Well, over the next 3 to 5 years, we've issued medium-term guidance, which is to reach £100 million worth of revenue on a global basis and 20% EBITDA margin. And perhaps I'll start with the margin first. Margin is very much within PensionBee's control. As you mentioned, we demonstrated adjusted EBITDA profitability last year, and we frequently report alongside that what adjusted EBITDA would look like if we didn't have marketing spend, which is our primary discretionary expenditure. And the margin levels that we could potentially achieve are actually in excess of 30%. And so that 20% is very much within our control. However, it's important that it's always balanced with the growth opportunity, which we've discussed is absolutely enormous, both within the UK and within the US. We're of the view that we should continue to maximize on the growth opportunity in front of us while steadily increasing that margin and reaching those financial goals. So margin, I would say, is very much something that we are focused on over the medium term, but reinvesting in growth is a primary priority for us, especially over the short term. And so then turning to the revenue metric of over 100 million, if we look at our UK business predominantly, we believe the vast majority can be delivered by our UK business alone. And we think that it's appropriate to set the objectives in that way because our US business needs to be invested in and grown so that it can achieve its 5 to 10 year ambition, which is to be equivalently sized to our growing UK business. And so that 3 to 5 year time horizon is one that we've carefully calibrated to make sure that we continue to maintain that consistent hitting of guidance that we've become known for since the time of the IPO.
Last question from me, and it's more of a Romi Savova question than a PensionBee question. So you have founded and led PensionBee, you had this vision, you have done a public listing in the LSE of this company, now you're doing an international expansion. How has your leadership approach or philosophy evolved? And what core principles have remained constant throughout this journey?
Well, I believe in offering a lot of freedom to the people who are on the PensionBee team. We have the best people within our marketing department, within our technology department, within our operations department. And it's really important that they feel entrepreneurial in the work that they are doing and that they have control over the way that they run their department and deliver on our mission and our vision. I often see my goal and my role as being one of making sure that the path forward is very clear and where the organization is going is very clear. But in the short term, I want to be there to help them align and to make sure that everyone is pushing in the same direction. I think that's been a successful strategy in terms of maintaining key members of our management team. The people who were in the room in 2014, 2015 are still in the room today. And having that culture of innovation and entrepreneurship amongst us is what helps PensionBee be a happy place to work.
That's great. Romi, thank you so much for that chat. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and good luck for the next chapter of PensionBee.
Thank you so much.